Hello everyone, this is Sarah from Nightbloom Vision, and today we will talk about game design. This is part 2. Previously we already defined games. We talked about game genres, game team, game designer, and we stopped somewhere around game design document. So I'm gonna fast forward. We already talked about the ideas, the story, and now we are going to talk about the camera. So you need to plan and choose the right camera zoom and position for your game. For example, if we had a character that was crying, we obviously need to zoom the camera on his face to give this crying and emotional scene more importance. Camera shows full character body when they take a fighting position, and this is done to show the fighting and the action in details. We should never let the character be out of sight of the camera, so the player can always see the playable character. And we have two types of camera basically. We have the first person camera, which is seeing the world through the character's eyes, and we have the third person camera, which is seeing both the playable character and her environment. This is an example of first person camera where we can see the hands of the player and the gun he is holding, but we can't see the body of the player itself. We can also see its environment. Well, this is an example of third person camera where we can see the main character Mario and his environment, and we can see Mario walking around and doing stuff. Moving on to controls, we have to stick to the controls that gamers are used to. So for example, we have the space for jump, arrows for movement, to avoid confusion. Changing them might make our players confused. This is why we need to stick to wherever a player are used to in this case. Make the character movement as realistic as possible. For example, if he's jumping, make sure to put good gravity so it can fall down. If in case he was walking on Earth, the gravity differs from when he is walking on Mars, for example. So you need to take care of these little details. The character controls should be adequate to the theme of the game. Mashing up buttons in your game is not a good idea every time, because players' thumb will get tired eventually. So you have to give them a break or some time to breathe on a checkpoint or to slow down the pace of the combat, so they won't feel sore at their thumbs. Hence, if they feel sore, they might stop playing your game, and this is not something we want. So this is a small example on how buttons are mapped out. So we have the A for pick up, we have the X for second ability. Try to stick to these controls as much as possible. Now we will shortly talk about HUD, which is heads up display. Heads up display, some examples are health bar and score, like these little hearts in here and the health bar in here. We have to keep the HUD simple and design easy to understand icons. So for example, we know that the heart refers to how many lives I have. We know that the green in the health bar is for health, and whatever is red is the health we lost. So you have to keep them as simple as you can, so people can understand them by just looking at them. You have like 1 second or half a second to understand what this icon in the HUD means. HUD should be quickly accessible, so you don't have to, for example, if you had an action menu, you have to not make your player press more than 3 buttons to reach for whatever action he needs. And we will see an example right after we finish this slide. You have to use readable fonts, of course, so player can understand quickly what this is about. Don't place HUD in the middle of the screen. You can place it, for example, in the corners. You can place it in the middle, up middle, down middle, but don't ever place it in the middle of the screen. Doing this will annoy the player, having something in the middle of the screen. So here we go. This is an example, Kingdom Hearts. We can see how the heads up display are placed on the corners of the screen. This is the HP of the enemy. It is really clear that this is how much health my enemy has. These are the health of my sidekicks. which are not playable characters. And this is the health of my own character and the MP, and it is done in a really nice way, understandable way. I just had to look half a second at this icon so I can understand what it means. And in here we have the action menu, for example. Basically Sora or the player can choose among these options. For example, if I clicked on this one, I would do a different attack than if I clicked on this button. And the good thing is that I don't have to press more than 2 buttons in order to make an action. So this is what we meant by HUD should be quickly accessible. Also, to add up, we have this feedback system that is implemented in this game, and which is something you should implement in your games too. So for example, whenever the main character, Sora, gets hit, his icon in here would show a different icon that shows Sora being in pain. So this is a good feedback system to show the player that he is taking damage. We can see also when Sora tries to hit an enemy, the enemy would fall back or would go a few steps back. This will also show the player that the enemy is actually taking damage. So always give some feedback in your game to show the player what is going on. Next, there are the levels. We need to plan our levels. As you can see in this picture below, the game designer had planned how the player would go down, walk on these hills, kinda. We have the spikes in here. We have the platforms, and there's this little arrow showing that the platform moves left and right, and this arrow up and down. We have some kind of water or lava, I'm not sure. And here are some stairs. Here's another one, more water. And we can see how the player will be walking throughout the scene and what are the different things that can harm him or make him lose the game. So anyway, we have to plan the levels according to their theme. So for example, if we had a level that is in the desert, we shouldn't add water, of course. Slowly introduce new enemies and power-ups throughout levels to include growing challenge. Of course, you shouldn't make your level too impossible to play, but you shouldn't make it too easy, because making it too easy will make it boring, and if it was impossible, it will be so tough that players will actually abandon it, leave it, and not play it again. So you have to have this kind of balance between your between boredom and challenge. Of course, you can do something like level 1 is easy, level 2 grows a bit in challenge, level 3 is more challenging than level 2. You would think this is obvious, but you need this in mind. You need to keep this in mind. So for example, level 1 I have 1 enemy, level 2 I have 2 enemies, level 3 I have the same 2 enemies but they are stronger, level 4 I have 3 enemies, etc. And of course I can, during level 1 my player will, attack points are less than what is in level 2. So let's say in level 1, each time my player strikes, he will get 10 points of attack. In level 2 he will get 15. In level 3 he might get 20, or he might even unlock a new ability like magic or health, etc. You have to have this growing challenge and give more power up and enemies throughout the levels. You should try to avoid boring tutorials levels. Learning should be over the whole game, so don't dedicate one full level, which is the first level, for the tutorial teaching your player how to play. Instead, you should make it along all levels. So each time you add a new ability or a new movement or attack, you should put a small tutorial about it within the game. You should make your player feel like he is going through a tutorial level. This will make him get bored easily and leave the game. You should name your levels adequately, and levels shouldn't be too long or boring, so you have to make them 1 to 2 minutes is a good number. These are some more examples. This looks like a maze game where you have to go from point A to point T, or maybe the opposite. and I have to reach my end destination by going through this maze. So this is about level planning. We have the combat system. Players love to feel cool. We play games because we have something missing in our real life that we find pleasure when finding in games. So for example, you have these people who are not strong enough, who are shy. They like to go and play games and look like they are the king of a certain kingdom and they are all powerful. So players love to feel cool. You have to give them unique cool attacks. You have to give them what they came for. Close battles are better because they are more exciting. Make it clear when a player gives or receives damage. For example, blood on screen, hurt animation for the enemy. We already talked about this during the HUD part. You should plan all your combat abilities beforehand so you don't have to go back and fix things when you are halfway through your game. So here in this example, we can see that Sora is taking damage just the way I was explaining it before. We can see here that he is falling back, which also shows the player feedback about getting hurt. The enemies. Here are some enemies I've personally designed. The first one, when I did these enemies, I thought I wanted two types of enemies. One for some sea levels and one for some ground levels. For the sea levels, I wanted the enemy to kind of have electrocution powers. So first thing I came up with is this jellyfish. For the two other designs, I wanted something crawling on the ground and they need to hurt the player with their claws. So I came up with these nice robot designs. All this is to say that the most important rule in game design is form follows function. So whatever function your enemy has, you have to make the form adequate to this function. We should plan and balance each enemy's health, attack powers, abilities, damage point, weaknesses, and this is in order to not make the enemy too easy to beat or too challenging or impossible to beat. We have to have a balance. The player needs to feel happy fighting an enemy and proud, rewarded after killing it, like for example randomly dropping loot from the enemies. For people who don't know about loots are whatever items get thrown off after beating an enemy, like coins, HP points, MP points, maybe a new weapon. So you have to have this reward system for your player so he can feel happy fighting enemies. Otherwise, he would just leave the enemies and go ahead and run away and just care about going from point A to point B without even attacking enemies. So you have to make the attacking enemies have some meaning for the player. Let the player have the final blow, especially if there are NPCs tagging along. So NPCs are these sidekicks I was talking about. They are non-playable characters. This is what NPC mean. You have to let your player have the final strike or the final attack. So for example, imagine yourself being in a boss battle and you did all the work and you fought the boss and he still needs one strike until the boss is dead. And then when you are about to give him this final strike, the NPC suddenly gets healed and he jumps and kills your enemy. This will feel really frustrating because you did all the work while your NPC was sitting there having his health back, and at the end you don't get to have the final blow. This is very annoying and frustrating to the player, so always let the player have the final blow. Let him have the moment of victory he is seeking for. So here are the enemies, we already talked about them. Mechanics. Mechanics are anything that can be jumped on, interacted with, or pushed around, and they constitute the mechanics of a game, such as opening doors, slippery floors, switches, and levers. Hazards are part of mechanics, but they are a little different from these items. They are elements that can actually hurt the player, such as fire and spike. You have to make a difference between hazards and enemies, because hazards are somewhat in most cases they are static, they don't move while enemies move. and they don't have this very complex behavior or complex artificial intelligence like the enemies. So you have to make the difference between them. Use them to make a game challenging but not impossible to play. And you should be creative. Avoid reusing the same cliche items such as spikes and fire, and use them in a rhythmic way. For example, you can see here this is a very old Sonic game, but the concept of hazard still exists until now. We have this platform which swings left and right. This is a part of the mechanics of the game. And we have here spikes, and these are hazards in the game, obviously. Power-ups and rewards. Players are greedy. We are greedy humans. Use it to your advantage. Add a treasure chest in a hard-to-reach dangerous place. This will make the player go and risk her life to get it. Of course, you might have heard of this psychological experiment where there was an animal, and they used to make the animal do an action, and after he's done doing this action, he would get rewarded with food. The animal ended up doing this action on its own just because he is waiting for the reward. On the other hand, when the enemy did another action, he used to be punished with electricity. Okay, I know this is a bit inhumane, but this is what the experiment was about. We found out that whenever the animal was punished, he is more likely to do this action less, and whenever he is rewarded, he would do it more. Human kinda work the same way. So whenever you reward the person, he is more likely to do the same action, and whenever you punish him, he is less likely to do it. So you have to, for example, drop them loot when they kill enemies, just as we mentioned before, and this will make them do this action more, so that it will make them go and attack more enemies instead of just running away from them. So in here, if you add a treasure chest in a place that is very dangerous and that can make the player risk his life, because we are greedy humans, we are more likely to try and go ahead and try to reach for this place in order to get the treasure. We have to plan out the currency system and the power-ups for our entire game. This is really important. And we have to add random loots to reward the player for killing enemies or completing a mission. So why are missions something we really love to do? Because they give us reward, they make us more strong by giving us more HP, more MP, more attack, more defense points. They make the mission have a meaning. If missions don't have a meaning for your game, then the player is more likely to not even go and take missions. Here are some examples of power-ups from Mario. We have these mushrooms. One of them can make Mario super big, and the other one make him invincible for some time. So yeah, these are pick-ups, coins, for the currency of the game. And these are some enemies. Final important tips. Never make the player feel dumb. You have to make the player feel smart. This is why players like to play game. They like to feel smart. Drop loot for players to keep them playing. Missions and contests keep players playing as long as they have meaning. Forms follow function. Be creative. Don't change obvious things such as controls. Don't hang on to every idea you get. Don't be afraid to throw up bad ideas. Remove anything that doesn't fit in your game. Game design is a very big field, and it's a whole major by its own. We will be making more tutorials in depth about each of these keys that we already talked about, like ideas, stories. We will go in depth for each of these topics. This presentation or this lesson was only a quick introduction. So now I will just take 1 minute of your time to talk about Nightbloom Vision tutorials. So we have a new website, nightbloomvision.com. We have free YouTube tutorials channel, free access to written tutorials on our website. Everyone gets to learn. Channel also feature all our work and sneak peeks. You can watch our videos and support us with a like, comment, and subscribe. If you like what we do, you can support us in many ways by becoming our patron, joining our team. If you like to make games with us or write tutorials to add more nice content to the website. Become a member of our community and you can like, comment, and subscribe our videos. Our message to you, please guys, never give up on what you like. You can turn your dreams into reality. Failing is okay, but giving up is not, so never give up, guys. Now we will try to develop a mini game design document altogether. So basically we have three types of game designs document. We have three types of game design documents. The first type is a one-pager. This is more like a proposal for your boss or for your team to see if the game is promising or not. Then after the one-pager would come the 10-pager. The 10 pages is also a kind of more expanded proposal, and whenever you like the 10-pager, you can go and do a full game design document, and this is where the game is actually being planned and is coming to life. For the purpose of this video, we will start by planning our one-pager. So developing a mini GDD, we have to, of course, think about the title of our game, the platform or console. So for example, is our game going to be on Android or iOS or Windows or I don't know, Mac or PlayStation? So you have to have a clear idea of what platform your game will be on. The target age, so who will play my game? Is it a game for kids between 3 and 10 years old, or is it a game for adults? So it depends on whatever your game is about. The rating, you need to know the rating of your game. One of the good rating techniques is ESRB. Of course, you have already seen the everyone or 10 plus or 20 plus. So for example, if our game has sexuality and lots of violence, it shouldn't be rated everyone. It should be like rated 18 plus or something like this. Game summary, you have to have a clear idea about what your game is going to be about. So for example, in one of our games, which is Night Climb, if you ever watched the other video, the game summary is as follows. A small character is going to jump from tree to tree, from left to right, and is going to collect points on its way by avoiding enemies. So this summarizes what our game is about. Your summary might be longer because your game might be a big game for Windows or consoles, while the game I talked about is for mobile. So game summary, you know what game summary means now. Unique selling points. What makes your game unique? We do live in a very competitive world, so I need to know why my game is unique. What makes it stand out from other similar games? And finally, similar competitive products that are out there on the market. Finally, I would like to recommend this book for people who would like to go and read. It's called Level Up, The Guide to Great Video Game Design by Scott Rogers. It's a really nice book. I really enjoyed reading it. You can go ahead and read it, and it gives you all the information about, in detail, about what we have been saying during this tutorial. And of course, I will be posting more in-depth tutorial about game design very soon, if you want to follow these. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon and join our Discord for further questions, discussions, or just to have fun. We have a new website, www.nightbloomvision.com, where we also offer free articles and tutorials. Make sure to give it a look. All the links are provided in the description. So see you next time!